Welcome to the November 27th, 2018 episode of Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And OldManStompy.
OldManStompy, back from a long hiatus.
So the last episode that I was on, I hosted and you weren't there, so as far as you know, I haven't been here in like a year.
Look, if nobody was here to hear it, and then, believe me, nobody was.
Nobody matters.
It didn't happen.
It's like that one Far Side comic. Like, if a tree's in the middle of a forest and it falls on a mime and nobody's around, does anybody care?
And everybody got what they wanted, except for the mime.
That's the mime didn't have a single bad thing to say about it.
Well, I have a feeling after that Detective Pikachu trailer that mime stocks are on the rise. Right?
Yeah,
that mime was sassy as fuck.
Yep.
I actually didn't see that yet.
He's telling you to shove it? Yes.
But that was the end of Animaniacs. Believe it or not, they had a movie that ended it called Wacko's Wish actually brought the end to the Animaniacs story, which you didn't think was a thing. But everybody in all the characters in the show got what they wanted except for the mime, literally.
Huh.
Like, even Pinky and the Brain got important jobs, and it was pretty funny.
I'm also reminded of the Mel Brooks movie, Silent Movie,
where
there's only one word said out loud in the entire movie, and it's by Marcel Marceau, the
most famous
very
mime
famous
of all time.
Mime. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's freaking brilliant. And he was in full makeup and everything, so it must have been kind of weird for him to do, because you're really not supposed to talk when you're actually in your outfit.
I'm sure he appreciated the opportunity to play a little bit outside his character.
It was wonderful. Yeah,
he was outside of his invisible box.
Well, it was great because the phone's ringing, and it was so stupid because he's going to get the phone, but he's fighting through invisible wind and stuff in his room. Like, this is his life. It was really funny.
What's actually pretty funny is
invisible wind.
My girlfriend and I and a few friends last night, we had a fajita party where I made fajitas, as you would suspect.
Yeah, I was like, oh really?
And we watched Spaceballs, and of course that's in the background during the rental movie scene where they go through all the Mel Brooks movies. So it was. That was reminded me that I need to watch that movie. I need to watch Silent
Movie is so damn funny. It's it's criminally forgotten. It's everybody uses the word underrated like they know what it means, and they don't. But everybody forgot about Silent Movie.
So these days, underrated means properly rated, but I want to talk about it right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
I think it's more underrated in its day, but now it gets a lot of attention, so I'm still gonna call it underrated.
No, honestly, what they mean is underrepresented. Nobody's heard of this game, but the people who have love it. That's not underrated. That's very highly rated by 10 people.
Well, anyway.
Oh yeah, this is reactive.
This is reactive. Not that it matters anyway, because we're...
Yeah, let's talk about James Bond some more.
I mean, our podcasts are about our inane prattle anyway, but our subjects are just a way to get there. But let's do move on to some good topics here. I did want to give OldManStompy an opportunity to talk about the Survivor Series, which he had requested to go over. So would you please take it away?
Sure. So this will not be nearly as involved as the last time I was on Talk About Wrestling, which was just an absolute fucking clusterfuck.
You've never talked about wrestling.
I've never talked about wrestling before, as far as you know.
What's wrestling?
So anyway, this last weekend was Survivor Series. Well, actually, by the time this airs, it'll have been 2 weekends prior. Was WWE Survivor Series, which is one of the big 4 pay-per-view shows. There's WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and the fall show is Survivor Series.
Isn't this one of the most? Isn't this the least big of the 4?
Well, so usually... it depends. It's become less important over the years, especially about 4 or 5 years ago, because they were having a lot of trouble cooking up a good feud for Survivor Series. So the gimmick for Survivor Series is that all the main matches are elimination matches, aside from maybe there's a title match. That really means that you have to engineer a feud to require like 5 superstars who don't usually interact with each other to form a team to fight 5 other heel superstars.
Isn't that basically like what Royal Rumble is?
No, the Royal Rumble is just everybody. It's 30 people get in the ring and they're vying for a shot to main event WrestleMania, which usually means that only like 2 or 3 of the people who are actually in the match are believable, possible victors, but they try to string you along all the way to the end. Survivor Series is a faction match.
Well, no, this is a really ignorant question, but have they ever teamed up a babyface and a heel where like the heel's just kind of like annoying but like grudgingly cooperating or anything like that?
Like Daffy Duck.
I mean, that happens all the time. So like one of the most common things is, I mean, I've shown you the video a while ago of Jericho when he returned in 2012 and he was teaming with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, who were like 2 of the biggest fan favorites on the planet, and everybody was so excited to see the 3 of them team up. And so it's like built, and like Jericho had come back for the first time after not having wrestled in like a couple of years. And so CM Punk is getting his ass kicked, and he's like building to the hot tag where Jericho is just supposed to explode into the ring. And like he does it. He tags Jericho in, and Jericho comes running into the ring, and he comes like running to all 4 sides of the ring, getting the fans all hyped up. He's like spinning around like a maniac. Then he shoves the referee, and then he tags Daniel Bryan in, and he leaves, and he just walks all the way back up the ramp.
That's genius.
Like still screaming exactly as he had been when he was trying to hype the crowd up, but this time they're all booing him because he's an asshole. And like that's
fantastic.
That's really common. That's how a lot of, when it looks like the heel, the face team has an overwhelming advantage in a Survivor Series match, that's often how it gets equalized, that one guy just turns heel.
I thought Jericho was a face, though. Isn't he usually a face?
Jericho is very popular, but he is a tremendous heel. He is such an asshole, and like
because in real life he's a really cool dude. So
I'm sure a lot of these guys. I mean, like Hulk Hogan is a gigantic asshole in real life.
And he's the biggest face
of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I should say that most people are who are like very successful wrestling personalities are like themselves turned up to 11, but that doesn't have anything to do with like your alignment in wrestling.
That's
like
true.
The Rock is pretty much always playing his public persona, even when he was a wrestler, the same one that he plays in Hollywood right now. But he has been but like his Hollywood persona was a tremendous heel, and like he really wasn't that different than he was now in Hollywood when he was a face.
Yeah,
it's his mannerisms and like the way that he is as a person and the kind of storylines that he's involved in. Like it's the coolest thing in like anime or like comics, whatever, when like the villain grudgingly decides to go along to fight a bigger villain. Those are always like some of the coolest team ups. And Knuckles.
Yeah. I'm just thinking
featuring Dante.
Yeah, but Knuckles actually qualifies for this trope.
Well, barely. He wasn't really a villain. He was possessed.
No, he wasn't possessed. He was misunderstood. He misunderstood the situation.
So that's the best Survivor Series match is Sonic and Tails and Knuckles and Amy Rose versus Dr. Robotnik, like Big the Cat, Omega, E Gamma 102 or whatever it is, and Grounder.
Well, in that case, I would say it's E Gamma 102 is the big cool team up, and then Robotnik teaming up is the big cool team up to deal with Ark and the villain that like was never trying to conquer the world. It's just there was a problem with the space station, and then there was the ultimate life form, which I don't know why it was the ultimate life form. It was a big, stupid, slow thing, and Shadow was way better at being the ultimate life form. But
it's ultimate.
Well, there was also Sonic Chronicles, where Dr. Robotnik teamed up with them and gave them access to Omega so that they could take down the civilization that Knuckles originally came from.
Well, this happens with Bowser quite a bit. He does the heel face turn.
Mario RPG, that was incredible when he joins your party. That was amazing.
So, I will say that Survivor Series particularly is that's like elimination matches that are like 5-on-5 are like my favorite kind of matches in wrestling. Just that's the aesthetic I like. My favorite comic book fight of all time, even though it wasn't that great, like in the abstract, was Infinity Crusade, the third Infinity War series.
Oh, was that with like the Thanos versions of everybody?
No, that was the second one, Infinity Wars.
Okay.
Infinity Crusade was the third one, where the villain was the goddess, the good side of Adam Warlock, and she like inspired all the heroes who were religious to fight on her side, and they had to fight against all the other heroes who were like scientific and atheist. and they had this one entire issue that was just all of the heroes from the two sides, and this like gigantic elimination battle where they were continuously like moving around to go intercept the other heroes who had won their fights. And like I think like fucking like Strong Guy wins the whole thing or something. It wasn't because it wasn't important. It wasn't important who won the fight. Like, it was all a distraction to get all the heroes out of the way so that the goddess could recreate the cosmic cube, or the cosmic egg, or whatever.
Fair enough, but who would have thought that fucking Strong Guy is the, like...
Well, you know,
those crossovers are always what those things are. I mean, like, the Marvel vs. DC crossover, I mean, was... nobody wins, of course, because no company wants to lose.
Well, yeah, you would never have, like, Marvel is better than DC, or DC is better than Marvel, like, canonically.
They do have certain characters beat other characters though, so that's the interesting part.
Well, Wolverine beat Lobo. Like I think
Superman beats Hulk.
You know what I thought was funny was I think it was proven that the Quicksilver was faster than Flash, but Flash won the fight. It was something weird
that's really dumb because like the Flash is obscenely fast.
Well, I think this was before they went into the whole like insanity that Flash can do, but I think. It was either Quicksilver was faster and Flash won, or Flash won is faster and Quicksilver won. But I think it was Quicksilver was faster.
My favorite fight though, my favorite fight out of that whole thing was Submariner versus Aquaman. Aquaman just calls a killer whale to jump out of the water and land on the Submariner, and that's how he wins the fight.
I kind of like Wolverine versus Lobo because they both give each other a look and like. Fight like Looney Tunes style, like they both dive behind a bar and you just see like pow bang, and then Wolverine gets up and leaves, and you just never see what the actual fight was. Like that's kind of nice.
Anyway, it's OldManStompy. Please talk about Survivor Series.
In the last 3 years or so, like I already was inclined to like the Survivor Series format, but in the last 3 years or so, they've doubled up by also adding in a brand faction format where they divided the roster between Raw and SmackDown, and they fight in like a best of 7 series over the course of the entire pay-per-view. So they have the 5-on-5 elimination for like all the men, all the women. They pick teams. Then they do the tag team division, and then the Intercontinental and the United States title holders fight each other. The women's title holders fight each other. The tag team titles on each brand fight each other, and the men's title holders fight each other. So you get this gigantic like 7-on-7. Like 7, matches where you get to see matchups between champions that you would basically have to wait years to see again.
Oh wow!
And so you're tracking like which brand is winning over the course of the entire pay-per-view. So last year it went to the as you can imagine, it went to the 7th match, which was the 5-on-5 men's elimination match, and Raw wound up winning 4-3. So the storyline is all building up to the SmackDown wrestlers having this chip on their shoulder that they have to go and overcome the Raw wrestlers. At the same time, we also know that in real life, Fox Sports just paid $1 billion for a multi-year contract to air SmackDown on Fox Sports.
Wow.
And
is that included in the Disney merger in the 20th Century Fox? I would imagine it would be.
I honestly don't know. I mean, Fox is maintaining a lot of their like news channels. I don't know if that includes Fox Sports.
Okay. That probably does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that meant that sometime in the near future, leading into next year, they were probably putting a lot of their star power on SmackDown because it becomes their leader, like their money leader. So it was interesting to see how that was going. The storyline was going to develop. What actually happened was just, I mean, I did not enjoy this pay-per-view. I enjoyed some of the individual matches, but like they ruined the concept of Survivor Series for me, I have to say. Like in this one pay-per-view. So it started with the tag team match, which is just impossible to watch. It's 5 tag teams, so 10 guys on each side. And you have to do all the eliminations. So like how do you eliminate 20 guys in like a 20-minute match? You're just constantly seeing guys hit their finishers on each other.
Yeah. You don't even get to be wound up by it. It just is boom, 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 right?
Right. So SmackDown wound up winning the match. It was actually on the pre-show, so it was the match they deemed the least worthwhile to make it onto the main show, which is interesting to me because it meant that they were only going to have like basically 6 matches on the main show, which is nice because it means that the individual matches get a lot of time in a 3.5-hour pay-per-view. SmackDown won that one, and it felt like they were building towards like SmackDown having an advantage because it seemed like since Raw won the last year that SmackDown will be favored. And so the idea was that when you watch a wrestling match, you kind of get an idea as to who has to be protected and who is likely to win, and if they lose, it'll probably be due to interference, so they still look strong. That meant that the men's Raw champion was Brock Lesnar, who, with Roman Reigns out due to cancer, is still the dominant, the big man on campus. And it's hard to imagine him losing a straight up match to anybody that isn't a title match for his championship. Same thing for the women's title, which is currently held by Ronda Rousey on Raw. So it was odd to me to think that either the men's title matchup or the women's title matchup would actually go to SmackDown. The Raw tag team is currently held by a new tag team called the Authors of Pain. And before you ask, yes, someone on the internet pretended to be them and published a book on Amazon called Pain. Which is a series, which is a short 60-page ebook,
bread?
Which is all poetry about pain.
Is it a French book about bread?
It is not a French book about bread. It is a book about pain. It is hilarious.
Okay. How long is it?
It's 60 pages. You can find it on Amazon. I'll show. I'll try to link it in the comments to this podcast.
This is great.
So anyway, they were on developmental in NXT for a really long time, and they just came up to the main roster and they just won the titles. So it was really unlikely that they were going to lose their match either. Because they're still on that upward trajectory where they're being built up as the dominant monster tag team on Raw. So that's 3 matches already where you see it seems like it's unlikely that SmackDown is going to win without some kind of shenanigans going on. So I'm sitting here watching this, and the first match I think was the Intercontinental versus the US title match, and Intercontinental champion is Seth Rollins from the Shield. The SmackDown champion is Shinsuke Nakamura. And Seth Rollins wins in a pretty good match. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that Raw won that one, and they're probably going to win these other 3. So, what the hell is going to happen that it's possible for SmackDown to make this competitive? And as it turns out, Raw won every single match for the rest of the pay-per-view.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, but apparently they were supposed to win 7-0, but whoever was producing the first match, the tag match, forgot or didn't find out that was the plan. And so they booked SmackDown to win by accident. And so when the pay-per-view started and the pre-show ended, they said the score was set to 0-0, which is confusing to everybody who watched the pre-show because it looked like SmackDown just won a match, and they just ignored it for the rest of the pay-per-view, which is the stupidest thing.
Jeez.
Wow.
So there's a guy on Reddit who's been doing a recap of the Wrestling Observer, the Dave Meltzer newsletters leading up to 2001 when WCW finally went under for the last time and was sold to WWF. And it feels a lot like this, except there's nobody to sell the WWE to when they continually fuck up. All the pay-per-views in the mid-2000s, late 99 for WCW, they all had these crazy matches with stipulations that made no sense and didn't actually matter to the finish of the match. They'd have matches where they would say it was, victory by submission only, and then they would end in a pinfall in the middle of the ring, and people were like, what is...
it's the whole point of the match wasn't followed?
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. They would forget storylines halfway through. They rebooted the entire continuity at one point in the early 2000s, right around WrestleMania season. They hired new writers and just forgot all the previous storylines and started all over again. It was that's
how do you
what
even
happens.
Convince your fans that of something like that?
So what was really funny is the guy who was writing WCW at the time, Vince Russo, he really loved booking angles that reference things that only internet fans knew about. So if you ever
he's the Garth
Ennis
of who's the guy who did Animal Man? Do I have that right?
No, you're thinking of
Grant Morrison.
Grant Morrison.
Yeah, so Vince Russo is the Grant Morrison of wrestling.
I would say that's the case. Yes, he fills all. He doesn't. Well, Vince Russo doesn't really book anything of substance. Grant Morrison obviously has a lot of really, really high-quality comic book writing under his belt. Vince Russo has... I don't know what Vince Russo has.
But the point is, though, Grant
fanboy
Morrison brings up the most obscure shit and just sees if you get it from 30 years ago.
Yeah, but that's not... That's
remember
not
this happening in the Silver Age? No, you don't. I'm the only one who does.
But the point is that he tries to bring those stories into a modern time. It's kind of like the new Doctor Who, where they're trying to write the stories in the modern continuity, but they're also keeping an eye towards the history of the series and trying to mine that for new stories to bring for the fans to enjoy seeing them with the budget that Doctor Who has right now.
Yeah.
Vince Russo is not like that. He was one of the writers in WWE when they, or WWF, when they became really popular, when they had this like big resurgence in like 96, 97, 98. He eventually left the company and went back to WCW, but like he was the guy who wrote like a lot of the crazy
Attitude
angles
Era.
that got the fan really invested in the Attitude Era. But he obviously needed a filter. And when they brought him on to be the primary writer on WCW, it was a disaster, and just nobody had any idea what was going on from like week to week within the company. People were leaving, they were frustrated, and I just don't understand what the point was of this current WWF pay-per-view. It feels like it has the same like stink all over it. So the individual matches, a lot of them were a lot of fun to watch. The men's title match, Daniel Bryan is actually the men's title holder on SmackDown again, and he's a heel, which is great because he's a fantastic heel, even though he's a tremendously popular wrestler with the fans. In real life, he's kind of a sarcastic asshole, like his personality. Like he gets along with people, but if you don't really enjoy that sense of humor, like people have said they have a lot of trouble getting along with him. And like he plays that kind of like snakish, like asshole heel really well. He was before he was like babyface, beloved Daniel Bryan, he was an abusive boyfriend, and he was hilarious if you're into that kind of storyline. If you're into like knowing that like it's just a character. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that line is hard. Like right now, they're playing Roman Reigns' cancer into a storyline, and that's really hard to digest. Because if he was a character who had a disease, that would be an interesting story. Because like it's there's a lot of pathos in watching a Superman brought low by the human condition. But to know that the human being
also
who
a
plays
Grant
that character,
Morrison storyline, by the way. One of the best Superman stories of the last 30 years.
Which one's that?
Was Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, not to be confused with All-Star Batman. I'm the goddamn Batman. But no, Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman was about Superman getting cancer, and showing and having a good time with Lois Lane, and basically like doing all of his like favorite things and good things for the world before he died. Is actually quite good.
That was the point, right? The All-Star Superman was supposed to be like a celebration of the Superman character, like as in his golden age, right?
Correct.
And like learning to say goodbye to it, sort of.
It was really, really awesome. I recommend anybody read that, even fans that aren't people who aren't big fans of Superman, because it was awesome. But yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they're sort of making sort of snide references to Roman Reigns and his current struggle with cancer as a person, in storyline, and to me that's just in very bad taste.
Yeah.
The women's title match was between Ronda Rousey and Ric Flair's daughter, Charlotte Flair. It was supposed to be between Ronda Rousey and the current women's champion, Becky Lynch. But they had a really hot angle a week before the pay-per-view was supposed to air, where the SmackDown women's team invaded the Raw women's locker room, and they just like beat the crap out of Ronda Rousey and then stormed the ring where a bunch of the women were having like a 3-on-3 tag match. And it was awesome, but one of the women on the Raw roster punched Becky Lynch right in the face, what looked like a real punch, and like gave her a concussion and cracked her eye socket.
Jesus.
And she wound up with having to withdraw from the match. And she's just been like sitting on Twitter angry for the last week, trying to like basically keep her seat warm when she recovers.
She's been like riling up the fans, for I guess what might be WrestleMania, like the title match of WrestleMania, or what she wants to be the title match of WrestleMania, maybe.
So there's a couple of ways to do this. The idea in the long run, the original idea was that after Ronda Rousey came back at the Royal Rumble last year and had her first big match, her first like really big WrestleMania match last year, that they would build towards a confrontation between Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair. Charlotte being the biggest name women's wrestler they had on the roster, other than Ronda Rousey at the time.
Sure.
And they figured that had a lot. That was a lot, and that they would sell that as potentially the first women's match to main event WrestleMania. Especially if Brock Lesnar wasn't around, then Ronda Rousey was easily the biggest like mainstream star that would be a full-time wrestler for WWF. So it actually made sense to do this. There's a couple of directions.
It's the only way she could get a win is if somebody wrote it. So
that's. I mean they've been using this in the storyline more or less. That so she was part of an MMA group called the Four Horsewomen, And that was also, I mean, it takes its inspiration from, I mean, obviously the Bible, but before that there was a...
Before the Bible?
Yeah, before that, the real horseman.
In the hieroglyphics era.
So in wrestling parlance, it refers to Ric Flair. Obviously, that was not before the Bible. Rick's not that old.
Woo.
Woo. Woo, crispy. Woo, honey mustard.
Seriously, this is not Ric Flair.
So he was part of a group. I think it was Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, and Arn and Ole Anderson, who were like these two guys who looked like they were born at the age of 42. They looked like a bunch of guys who would like kick the crap, who would beat the crap out of you, and then go sit down at the bar and have a beer, and then immediately turn around and just beat the crap out of each other. Like it was that kind. This was like in the heart of the Mid-South. Ric Flair's from North Carolina. It was like that kind of like posse they were trying to build up.
Gotcha.
They joined up with WCW at the end of most of their careers. Flair, obviously, he wrestled until he was like 58. He only retired like 11 years ago, I think, which is not that long ago, by considering how long he's been around. But they
still does a lot of events and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean he's a little over 60 now. He had a really big medical scare last year, but he seems to be in good spirits now. I mean, he was a lifetime alcoholic, and I'm sure he did other stuff. He's like a lot of wrestlers. He's starting to show the wear.
Sure.
So you never know. Anyway, so they've inspired a number of like groups that style themselves after the Four Horsemen, which in wrestling parlance was Ric Flair and his three enforcers, basically. So in MMA, it was Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamine Duke. And all four
Ronda
of them.
Rousey, if I might say, has always been had the wrestling WWE facade. Like her nickname is even a reference to Rowdy Piper, right?
Oh yeah, she's a huge fan of professional.
That's probably
wrestling.
where it all came from.
Right. She actually was like bequeathed Roddy Piper's jacket, and she wears it to the ring.
That's awesome.
Like, a little bit before he died.
Oh, it was with his blessing, huh?
I believe it is.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Right. I mean, because she'd have been using the name while he was still around, and he would attend some of the events. I mean, there's a lot of crosstalk between professional wrestling and MMA. The Undertaker, like he styles himself an MMA fighter. Goldberg used to do MMA commentary. Like a lot of these guys have. I mean, obviously Brock Lesnar.
And Mick Foley did BattleBots.
Yes. No. He did Robot. He did Robot Wars.
Robot Wars. I'm sorry.
He had so much fun on that show too. You can just tell.
Mick Foley seems like he has a lot of fun all the time.
Yeah, no, he loves being a heel. That's like his thing. And even in like competitions that aren't wrestling, like he famously like will cheat, like during them. Like I've seen him do it on like a talk show game that they're doing. He'll just like wink to the audience and like cheat in front of them while the game's going on.
But I mean, like he does it in kind of like a Penn and Teller kind of way, where like the audience is in on the joke, so he's not entirely a heel. Cheating is when you're not rooting for the guy who's doing it. Otherwise, you're just taking advantage. Like Eddie Guerrero was another guy like that, where like he cheated, but you loved him for it.
Yeah.
And like Ric Flair's retirement match, Ric Flair was always the dirtiest player in the game. Like he was often a heel, especially because he like played the Hollywood character most of his time in the Deep South. And so when he had his retirement match against Shawn Michaels, he was pulling everything out, the nut shots, the eye rakes, everything. And like you didn't want him to lose because this was his last match. Like you were rooting for him. And even Daniel Bryan now, like he was supposed to be playing the heel against Brock Lesnar in the Survivor Series match. But he was getting the shit kicked out of him for the first 5 minutes of the match, and like even the announcers were having difficulty watching. I mean, they were obviously selling the storyline, but like the crowd was totally dead till all of a sudden like the ref has an accidental collision with Lesnar, and Daniel Bryan just like kicks him in the nuts, and like that, and, like the crowd goes apeshit. They're so excited to see Brock Lesnar get kicked in the balls. And like that like turned the match around. The next 6 minutes was actually really close. It was a really compelling match. Obviously, like Lesnar wound up winning. It turned out to be exactly the same as his match from the previous year. or had a very similar structure. He wrestled AJ Styles.
Oh, cool.
So coming into that match, it was SmackDown 3, Raw 2. So you had a pretty strong impression that the Raw team was going to win to make it 3-3 heading into the final match. So it was kind of a given that Lesnar was gonna like beat AJ Styles pretty easily. But they did a really good job of making you feel like it was possible AJ Styles could win. This match followed like largely the same structure. They were almost identical in terms of how the pacing of the match was, where Lesnar just dominated for the first 5 minutes or so. The announcers were talking about how he should just pin him already and end the match. It didn't seem like Styles/Bryan was getting any offense in whatsoever. And then all of a sudden there's this big flurry where Lesnar's on his back foot for the last 5-6 minutes until all of a sudden he pulls off one finishing move and wins the match. And that's a lot of his title defenses. It's gotten a bit boring. So to see it happen again with the title not on the line when he could actually afford to take the loss was a little bit frustrating, especially since when Daniel Bryan originally won the title at WrestleMania 30 4 years ago, this was probably supposed to be how he lost the title. It was he was probably supposed to lose it at SummerSlam, but he wound up suffering his repeated concussions and went on the shelf for a while, and then next year he wound up retiring until he's miraculously came back a few months ago. Basically, what I was trying to say about the Four Horsewomen/Four Horsemen was in NXT when we had this very recent resurgence where finally the WWE started taking women's wrestling seriously. There were 4 women's wrestlers down in NXT that had yet to be called up to the main roster that were sort of seen as the next big thing, the next generation of very talented women's wrestlers. It was Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Becky Lynch. And they would do the Four Horsewomen hand signal all the time, and now all of them have been on the main roster, and a lot of them haven't really been doing anything because the writers for WWF don't really know how to write good stories for women. But also all of them
just think of them as men, and then there you go.
Well, they don't really know how to write good stories for the men either, so I guess you're just fucked no matter what you do.
I mean, remember Alien? You know why that was so good? Because the main character was a man, and then they changed it to a woman and didn't change anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I mean, there are so many stories that have been done over and over and over again in wrestling. This is they keep going back to that.
Sure.
To some extent, people really want to be refreshed. And when you have someone like Rousey who comes in, the story that they were trying to tell with her almost felt like she didn't understand why everybody was such an asshole in wrestling. Why is everybody always tweeting all these mean things about her just to promote a match that they're going to have in a month? I've never even met you. Why don't you like me? Why are people always jumping out of the locker room to beat up my friends?
She was in UFC. Everybody got beat up in there constantly.
Yeah, but they didn't get beat up. Well, I shouldn't say that. So, Conor McGregor, he seems to be a wrestling character in real life.
Sure.
He's the top of the heap right now in UFC, and he should be arrested for some of the things that he's done behind the scenes.
Oh, sure. No, right? He's done terrible things.
He assaulted somebody and threw a chair at somebody on a bus, and then he wound up fighting that guy in a UFC match immediately after that.
And then there was a brawl afterwards, wasn't there?
I think so.
Yeah, there was a brawl.
That guy beat him badly.
Yeah.
And then said something to him, and there was very nearly and that was, I think, the same pay-per-view or one before that in UFC where Lesnar came in and cut a wrestling style promo challenging the current UFC heavyweight champion to a title match, and that guy Daniel Cormier. He is, I think, going to be hired by Fox Sports to commentate on SmackDown. So there's a tremendous amount of crossover between the UFC and MMA universes. But nonetheless, UFC only pretends to be scripted or aspires not to be scripted, and people watch it under the assumption that they're actually seeing 2 very skilled martial artists given their best, for an unknown outcome. Whereas in WWF, people are watching for the hope of getting a fulfilling conclusion to a storyline. So the audiences are very different. And maybe there's some overlap, but why people watch them is not really the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so that seems to be what they're building towards. I don't know if it will be a match leading up to WrestleMania and that they're going to do Rousey versus Lynch or Rousey versus Flair, but they seem to be building up to the 4 Horsewomen of WWF versus the 4 Horsewomen of MMA. So Shayna Baszler is the NXT Women's Champion right now, and Rousey is the Raw Women's Champion. And the other two, Marina Shafir, is married to somebody in NXT, and I think I don't know if she actively wrestles, but she's at the Performance Center, and she shows up at events occasionally to help out Baszler. And the other one, Jessamine Duke, I think she actually is about to debut, or has recently debuted for NXT. So all of them are in the WWF system, and they're ready to come up at any time once they're like well suited to television.
Oh, okay.
So that seems to be what we're heading towards.
Gotcha.
I don't know what Lesnar is doing. I assume at some point they're going to get the title off of him. So that was the thing. They didn't really build anything to Survivor Series because they had to do this stupid Saudi Arabia show, and all the storylines were built around that and the Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kane match. So I don't know. I guess we'll get a better
ignoring
picture.
The fact that Hulk Hogan should be banned for life.
I mean, they tried, but not really that hard. I guess Hulkamania was a little bit too strong for them.
You might say that their passion for banning him was not hot.
That's so obscure.
Funny. That's real funny.
It's like the only wrestling video I've seen.
Well, you've seen
I just made a reference to Suburban Commando that nobody got. So.
Well, I made a reference to the Dungeon of Doom, which was goofy as shit.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah.
With like a fucking wizard down there. It's like, what is this wrestling?
Oh, there's a temple in the in
There's no Hulkamaniacs here.
Yeah, like that was one of those things where like I was one of those people who never watched wrestling, so I'm like, guys, don't you know that wrestling isn't real? And then you watch the Dungeon of Doom segment and you're like, oh, no shit, everybody knows it's not real.
The gobbledygooker.
Yeah, I thought I was so smart, like, oh guys, I'm aware that they're just acting, and it's like, okay.
So one quick factoid, because you brought it up. The Gobbledygooker debuted at Survivor Series, I think 1988. Which
for Thanksgiving, right?
Well, you said it was like with The Undertaker, right?
For Thanksgiving, yes, which was the same pay-per-view The Undertaker debuted.
Yeah, well, that's how I first heard of it. You mentioned, like, because you were talking about how, like, oh, they throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. The same day The Undertaker debuted, like, they had a turkey guy called the Gobbledygooker, and I was, like, laughing, like, hysterically for, like, 20 seconds.
It's
like, what the hell is this?
The guy who played the Gobbledygooker, Hector Guerrero, was part of, like, the Guerrero family, which is this, like, long... traditional Mexican wrestling family that goes all the way back to like their grandparents.
So on their family tree, they have like the Gobbledygooker, and they're like, yeah, he's the weird uncle we don't talk about.
Well, it just kind of. Well, I mean, no, I'm sure was a great luchador down in Mexico, or at least like a reasonable part of the family. And the WWF took him and they made him into the fucking Gobbledygooker.
Oh.
Like,
why would you even agree to take that job?
Because it's funny as hell.
They pay you a lot of money, like
for that. Like for showing up to one match. Come on.
We all remember the Shockmaster, and he's known for falling through a fucking wall.
Yes, he is known for that, and not that much else.
He's gonna shock the world because he's the Shock Master. It's like, all right.
The best part of that is you can hear Ric Flair go like, "Oh God," like very loudly over.
And he's like wearing like I know, OldManStompy, you explain the rationale behind this. But it's even funnier if you don't know. Like, he's just wearing a Star Wars Stormtrooper helmet covered in glitter, and, like, you can clearly tell.
Yes.
All right, well, we should finish up the segment.
This was only like 4 or 5 years after Return of the Jedi came out, too. Like,
everybody knew what that iconic shape looked like. It was. Yeah. It wasn't like a generic helmet.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a Star Wars like prop toy thing.
So the moral of the story is that like wrestling is very stupid.
Okay. Yeah, we
shouldn't watch it.
I actually enjoy talking about wrestling with you more than actually liking it.
Yes.
Actually watching it.
Mr. Ryu actually asked me fairly recently if he should get into wrestling because Kenny Omega had become such a famous like wrestling personality. Like he's literally like one of the best wrestlers to ever live, and he has like a Street Fighter gimmick and like a Mega Man gimmick, and like he wrestles in Japan.
Yeah.
And but you were like, no.
I'm like, no, don't watch wrestling.
It's like getting into
settle for Yakuza 6. It's fine.
with all the NGPW guys in it. Yes.
Yeah, actually, those guys came back kind of in Yakuza Kiwami 2. You can hire them for like a mini game thing.
You are not the first person to tell me this. Oh my god.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't have a storyline or anything. It's just like we got this guy's likeness rights again. Like, okay, well.
So anyway, we should move on to other business for the week before we completely run out of time here. So any other last final thoughts on Survivor Series, OldManStompy? I know we interrupted a lot.
I've definitely talked all about wrestling that I'd like to talk about this week.
Okay, cool.
Unless you refer to something else that I haven't referred to yet during this.
Well, regarding Ronda Rousey and Roddy Piper, you said you said she got his jacket. Was this a jacket he wore as a wrestler, or was this something he wore in a movie or anything?
I mean, are you asking because of the They Live? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, because he also had a jacket on and that was just, I know it's not the most outrageous jacket, but it was kind of his look.
I'm sure he has had more than one jacket over the course of his career.
Did Ronda Rousey get his magic glasses to read subliminal messages though?
He did not. She did not get that.
Okay.
So there's a piece of memorabilia. It's like Bret Hart's glasses. Every time he came out from the back, he would take his glasses and put them on a kid in the stands.
Oh, okay.
And, when he was a face, and his famous Montreal screwjob was when he was leaving for WCW, but he had the WWF title, and so Vince was so scared that he wouldn't work the match correctly that he had him screwed out of the title. He had the bell rung before he actually tapped out or got to the finish. He basically betrayed him on live camera. Oof. And so those glasses are an urban legend collector's item in wrestling history.
Oh, wow.
The glasses that Bret Hart gave to that kid on the day that Vince McMahon screwed all of Montreal, Bret Hart's hometown.
Jesus.
Wow.
Anyway.
So, yeah, they're like the Kanye glasses, right? They're the shades.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you finish glasses.
Yeah. So anyway, I did want to go over some new stuff that was announced or semi-announced. We could move on here, but I always do love talking to you about wrestling because of your passion for it.
Yeah,
sure.
But this is something I'm really excited about. I know that you two are less excited, but we'll still find it cool. So the line of Sega Ages games, Sega 3D Classics, I believe is what they were called on 3DS, are finally also transitioning to the Switch. So they've already transferred one of the ports and made it even better, and that would be the original Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The other two releases that are set to come out are original Sega Ages ports, them being Lightning Force or Thunder Force 4, which was amazing on Switch, and the Phantasy Star 1, which will be amazing when that comes out. That's actually finally got an official release date of December 17th, I believe.
Oh, it says here Thunder Force 4 is already out, too.
Yes, Thunder Force 4 and Sonic are out.
Yeah.
And December 19th, I believe, is when Phantasy Star will come out, and we're also waiting on a masterful port of Game Ground. These are important because these tend to be the best versions of these games that you could ever play. Typically, you have real hardware enthusiasts like Lotus and myself that love playing these on real hardware, for accuracy purposes, so they're even better than virtual console releases and stuff like that. But the Sega Ages collections are made by M2, and they tend to be the best versions of these games. They add features to games that are 30 years old, and they modernize them and even just make them better for quality of life improvements and even just fun stuff that you could do to them. So what they announced this time around was Outrun, which is a huge big deal in Sega's history. It is one of their most popular arcade games. It is one of the games that sets the aesthetic for Sega as well. So a lot of big Sega fans will refer to the best of Sega as the Blue Sky So all of their best games always have like the happy and awesome blue sky, especially in the beginning of the game, and the feeling that comes, like the jubilance that comes from playing those levels, and the freedom and the carefree attitude. That includes Sonic the Hedgehog,
Yeah,
and a
of
lot
course.
of their other releases.
Actually,
Many
I
of
mentioned
their
this a
games
long
have
time
the
ago,
blue
but you know what?
skies.
Well, no, I mentioned this a long time ago, but you know what I thought was really cool was that when Yakuza 3 came out, Yakuza 1 and 2, a lot of people may not remember or know if they hadn't played them on the PS2, because you can't get them in HD unless you live in Japan. But Yakuza 1 and 2 you only had camera control in some indoor areas, but if you were running around the town, it was actually fixed camera angles like Resident Evil. But so when Yakuza 3 came out and you had free camera control all the time, it was really cool to walk around town and look up and see that it was like a beautiful blue sky, like it was a nice day. It's like, yes.
Sega is very much known for this as an aesthetic choice in almost all of their big titles. Jet Set Radio Future has it. Crazy Taxi has it. Space Harrier has it. Like all of these games start like this. So it is a big aesthetic that like Sega wants you to have a good time while playing their games. It's not serious business when these games start. They want you to have fun and enjoy the beauty of these landscapes.
This is no Cyberlip, is what we're saying.
but yeah, it's kind of amazing that a company can have an in-house style. Nintendo has it, I would say, but like just not too many other companies have an entire style that defines them, and Sega is one of them. Outrun is definitely a big proponent of that style. And is one of their coolest games of the 80s. It was one of the very first games to have a very realistic driving feel to it.
And that music is in your head forever. What was it called? Like Sand Shower or something like that?
Sound Shower. Magical Sound Shower is what the big song is called. But what's cool about this is the game will run at 60 frames per second. It will support actual widescreen, which is not something the original game did. And that means not stretched, like actual widescreen.
Yeah.
There will be all of the songs from every port of the game ever, including the Sega Genesis port.
Oh, jeez.
All of the songs from the arcade versions, the extra songs added to the 3DS one, and a song from Outrun 2 SP, which is the last arcade release of Outrun.
See, I love when companies do this, when they like... there are people, like, I've done videos on this shit, and, like, Kurt Kalata makes a living doing this with his hardcore gaming 101 stuff, where he has, like, this version of the game has this, but it's missing this other feature from that other version of the... So it's really cool when people, like, take all the shit in all the versions and put it into one... Like, people... Like, there are a lot of releases of games that are called the definitive version, and they may or may not be. Usually it's, like... We've brought it from 30 frames to 60 frames, so this is the one you want. But, like, it's not often you see someone take all the versions of a game with all the weird, unique features and putting them into one. That's so rare. So it's cool to see that happening here.
Yeah, well, what's really cool is the company that is making this is comprised of old-school veterans of a lot of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
So M2 is comprised of people from Cave, which is a big shmup company, who's used to be comprised of a bunch of former other shmup company fans, and also people from old Sega and people from old Treasure work for M2.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that worked on these actual games way back in the day are actually updating their old code in order to include these things and treating them right.
Like, I was gonna make a joke about how, whatever, Outrun, I already have, like, ideal arcade Outrun on, like,
no, you don't.
Yakuza 0 and 6, because, like, those were ideal arcade ports. And they gave you scanline features and everything, but they didn't have all the songs, though.
Yeah, no, this will add all of those features too. You can do it on all kinds of filters.
Yeah, because like Yakuza 0 was actually ideal Outrun until like now.
Well, they also are adding some other things like gyroscope features if you want to have like that that steering wheel style of
so you can move the 3DS around or like the Switch controller.
the Switch, yeah. So in handheld mode. So yeah, and you can also tweak the specs of the car as well to suit your playing style if you don't want to play straight arcade. Like, let's say if you want your tires to feel like they have more grip, so you can have a more tailored experience to the way that you drive.
That's cool.
They're allowing you to do that. So they are this is, in every sense of the word, a definitive version of the game. It's kind of like when Criterion comes out with their versions of movies. It has all kinds of supplemental material that will enrich your experience of loving this game. So the only thing that will be better than this port will be another Sega Ages port that's even better than
when
this.
They release it in 4K or something.
Well, on the next system after that. They typically only do one release per generation, and the previous generation was the 3DS.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, I don't remember any Sega Ages anything on the PS3, but there were a bunch on PS2. PS3 had some collections, yeah, but not Sega Ages that I can think of.
Sega Ages actually were there were plenty of games on the PS3. But you wouldn't recognize them because they chopped them all up. So Toe Jam and Earl 1 and 2 were actually sold separately. Those were Sega Ages games. The Golden Axe collection and the Wonder Boy collection of last generation. I
never saw a big compilation called Sega Ages, I guess.
It's because of the way that Sony forced them to sell the games. They didn't want to sell them as they ordered them not to sell them as a compilation, but as separate games.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty bad for business because the collections actually do better.
Yeah, exactly. Like you
get more for
stuff
your buck.
you didn't know. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, I know there's the new Sega collection out now on PS4, but like I haven't played that. But like on PS3, I got Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection for like $10 or $12. That's like 30-something cents per game. It's like, yes, please.
Yeah, so they showed up as Sega Ages titles on the Xbox 360, but not on the PS3. But they are the same games, and they are the same attention to detail and all that stuff. So they are the same versions. They're just not all bundled together, unfortunately. But so getting back to this, Outrun is going to be awesome when it comes out. They're also doing one for Space Harrier, which they announced earlier. So that will have all the special features of the 3DS version, which added the boss from the Genesis version to the arcade game.
That's cool.
Which was awesome. The original Space Harrier didn't have I don't think a final boss or something to that degree, and they added a final boss to the Genesis port.
And that's another thing I could say, like
was Space Harrier 2, I think.
Well, that's another thing that I could say was like
Space
ideal on Yakuza 0 and 6, but apparently now it's like an actual definitive collection version, which is cool.
Actually, no. It was the Master System version of Space Harrier 1 that had the boss in it. So, yeah, the unique boss that didn't exist in the arcade version, they added to it. So, neat stuff. So, anyway, this is better than your run-of-the-mill ports that'll be found in a collection. These are masterful versions, and they're only around $8. So, definitely pick them up if you are a Sega fan at all. So anyway, I should move on so we can get some more talking in here. There is a strong substantiated rumor that Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword will be ported to Switch, which will be a very good thing. EJ Aonuma kind of alluded to the possibility of a Skyward Sword on Switch which would be very good, which means they would put probably the work into it that would remove the motion controls.
Thank God you can make the game like palatable to play.
Yeah, I hope that's the case and they don't try to shoehorn them in and that's the only way that you can play. Because that was my big complaint about Skyward Sword. I actually really like the game, despite people's complaints about it, but the controls did not work well for me, and I don't normally complain about motion controls very much, but that game I do.
I don't think that you could like trivially do it on the Switch, right? Because it really requires the 2-point motion control that you get and the placement that you get from the Wii Motion Plus. Like you can't play it with just the Wiimote.
Sure.
And you only get the one gyroscope sensor or the
the
one,
right Joy-Con. Yeah.
in the Joy-Con.
Yeah.
So like in principle you could do it, but that means you could really never play the game in handheld mode, which would defeat the purpose of putting it on the Switch in the first place.
Yeah, I'm thinking they're going to substantially edit this game so that you could play it in a traditional way, and that will be really awesome, and it will therefore be the definitive version of the game. And of course they'll add content like they usually do to these things, but that'll be trivial trivial compared to what the gameplay changes. So I'm excited for that. There's also been a couple DLC characters in SNK Heroines Tag Battle, which I wanted to talk about real quick. So Genie from World Heroes is being added. They dug that out of a long way ago. World Heroes characters really haven't been included in many SNK crossovers at all, like King of Fighters or anything like that. So it's really neat to see World Heroes characters show up in one of their titles.
Yeah, the last time I could think of them showing up in anything was like Neo Geo Battle Coliseum on PS2.
Yeah, it's a shame that those characters really haven't been brought back, because there was some really good character design from them. They weren't the best games, but the very last one was very good. World Heroes Jet. So it's cool that they are bringing back characters from obscurity, and hopefully they will be joining the mainstream roster in the King of Fighters games at some point. But this is a good testing ground for that kind of stuff. They also added Miss X, which is Iori in drag.
So they brought him back from the original, like, what, Gal Fighters, whatever it's called?
Correct. So he was. There was a previous girls-only SNK fighter for the Neo Geo Pocket Color called Gals Fighters, and Iori in drag was the boss, and his name was Miss X.
It's just like Dr. X or Mr. X or whatever from Mega Man. It's like, shut up, it's Wily again.
Racer X.
Yeah.
I mean, that was by far the most transparent Wily. It was literally just Wily in a cape. And you could see they weren't even trying anymore.
Yeah.
And what was that, 9, where they're like, you know what we're doing here.
Yes.
But
in 10 where you beat Wily and it shows like 8-bit versions of all the Wily like begging cutscenes at the same time.
That's awesome.
Like we've done this so many times.
I mean, for real, like, why have you not learned? Actually, did you ever see the end of Mega Man 9? I think it was no, Mega Man 7. That one. You ever see the end of that one?
I did beat it, but a long time ago.
Oh,
yeah,
the
Super
ending
Nintendo
scene
one
is insane, because like Wily does the begging for mercy thing, and Mega Man's like, "No, man, not this time." And Wily's like, "Wait, but you're a robot. Robots can't kill humans." And you're like, "I am more than a machine. Die, Wily!" And like the only reason Wily escapes is because like debris falls from the ceiling and like treble and bass like take him away or something. And it's just like, you were gonna fucking kill Wily for real.
So it's funny too, because like in all the subsequent Mega Man game series, like things get worse and worse for humanity, and it would have all ended right there. If,
I know. Like, you were gonna do it. Like, you were really gonna do it. Like, when Wily, like, because Wily has, like, a dialogue box this time. He's like, "No, don't do it, Mega Man." And you're like, you've gone too far this time, Wily. I'm not letting it slide. You're like, oh, jeez. Like, it's freaking intense.
So, yeah, and I'm not being insensitive. This is Iori trying to pass himself off as badly as another character. It's not like a gender identity thing. It's him.
It's SNK being very insensitive.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is him in drag. It's not like. It's not like he is identifying as a woman in this game. No, he's trying to.
This is the second time. Like, we know.
Yeah. It is obviously Iori dressed up as a woman trying to fool the girls badly.
Is he actually trying to fool them?
Yes.
Okay, because like in Yakuza Kiwami 1, like you can go to one of the hostess clubs, and like Majima might be there as a hostess, but like he's not even trying to fool you. It's just like, you're going to be put up with a hostess, like, some variation of the name Majima-chan, and it's like,
no,
son of a bitch. And the whole reason he's doing it is to see if you'll fight him because he just wants to fight you. But he's wearing women's clothes, but he still like has his beard and eye patch. It's amazing.
No, in this one, like Miss X is the sponsor of the Queen of Fighters tournament in the Gals Fighter one. So he is trying to trick the women into fighting each other.
But why does he, again with him dressing in drag though, like, he did this already. Why does he think it'll work again? Like,
I'm not following the storyline.
Maybe this time, like...
Yeah, I don't know.
This time my disguise is really good, I swear.
I think it's just a nod back to the fact that they did this, and
well, yeah,
he's
a DLC character, not the boss this time. But it's like, dude,
it's funny to bring him back in this form.
Well, it is like it would be like if Capcom brought back like Cyber Akuma. It's like, remember that one time? Like, yes, I do.
That was from Marvel vs. or X-Men versus Street Fighter.
Yeah, fucking Cyber Akuma with like metal wings with jet thrusters that he descends on. It's like, yes.
How did you get these? Anyway.
Yeah, and why? For real. One of his arms is like a cannon. Like, what? All right.
And I have to move on here, but one more really cool DLC that got announced was for Mario Tennis Aces, which continues to get better and better. And they keep adding free DLC. It's part of Nintendo's mantra of games as a service from their start. And they've been so good about their DLC, especially for games that they didn't expect to sell as well as they did. They are rewarding...
ARMS.
Yeah, exactly. They're rewarding their fans with free DLC that matters. Like, it's good stuff. So Luma from Mario Galaxy... Boom Boom, which is the mini boss from Mario 3, and the big one is
back.
Pauline. So Pauline is Mario's original damsel in distress from Donkey Kong, and also now famously in one of the best scenes in a Mario game ever. Does she
leave her compact mirror and handbag lying around the court, and you have to go get them for her?
It's a handbag, a parasol, and a hat. First of all.
Okay, a parasol.
and you have to find them in you have to find them in Odyssey too. Like, that's
are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Great.
I didn't know that.
Nice.
But yeah, Pauline is actually in like a Mario universe game, which is I mean, in Mario Odyssey, I guess you could say that is true, but she's never been in a crossover title, one of the sports games.
Well, she has. Kind of.
Like Donkey Kong 93?
No. Like, in one of the Mario sports games, it was like... I don't think it was tennis, because I beat the hell out of tennis. It was tennis or soccer or baseball or something, like, I think on the GameCube. But she's kind of like... she's just kind of like there at the winner's stand when I think Mario wins. She's just kind of there like for congratulations.
But not as a playable character.
No, certainly not playable. Yeah. But like the thing is though, I think that might have been the first time you ever saw her in like not Donkey Kong. So that was like the big like, is that Pauline? Like it was like one of the like, what the fuck, really? Like that was that moment.
Was she in her brunette form redesigned from 93, Donkey Kong 93?
No, yeah, she was in her like her Odyssey look, like but on the GameCube. Again, it was like, is dress. That three? Yeah, like the Carmen Sandiego dress. Like, is that? Yeah. Is that like then like current graphics Pauline? Like they remembered Pauline? Like incredible.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool that they brought her as a main character, and hopefully she'll be in other crossover titles in the future. You know, like Mario Kart and all the big fun games that Nintendo is known for. You know, I don't necessarily want to see her as maybe as a Brawl character or a Smash Brothers character. That would be kind of fun.
No, you know what I want to see actually? Have Ghosts and Goblins. Have you heard of the upcoming, like, I think it's called Battle Princess Madeline?
No.
It's basically Ghosts and Goblins, but made by an indie developer who got like a huge backing on Kickstarter because apparently like his daughter was kind of like frustrated that there weren't like enough playable like girl characters in games like these, and he's like, I'm making one and you're in it, so like it's awesome. His daughter in the game, so like what would be kind of cool is if you had like a Mario is missing or kind of game where, you know, like now you play as Luigi, you gotta save Mario. I would love to see a game where like it wouldn't make sense with Donkey Kong, but like if Bowser captured Mario at the top of a tower in some stupid contrived way, and like Pauline's climbing ladders to get him.
You mean Super Princess Peach?
Does that happen?
That is.
I knew there was an action platformer, but I'm talking. It'd be funny to see like Donkey Kong, except starring Pauline this time.
Well, it's that, but starring Peach. But
Peach isn't Donkey Kong. Super Princess Peach is like a full-on side-scrolling game with powers and shit.
Oh well, you know what I mean. They switched the role is what I'm trying to say.
The point is that it's a Mario game starring Peach.
Yes.
More or less.
Yes.
Yeah, and you'd think it would be a feminist in a feminist way, but no, they actually fucked it up really bad.
I know her emotions are her powers. I'm aware, but no, I'm saying it would be cool to see a Donkey Kong game starring Pauline.
Gotcha.
Just like a really simple arcade title where it's like, oh.
Oh well, that would be a point. But yeah. I think that's all we have enough time for really in this one. But I did want to quickly mention a couple things that that were released just real quick. There's a recent Neo Geo port on the Switch that I've been looking really forward to called King of the Monsters 2. And that it's a fun giant kaiju brawler type game that I was really looking forward to. Heavy Barrel, which is one of the most popular Data East games from back in the day, also got a release. And finally, the Hori D-pad controller finally got a Western release, which is it's a Joy-Con replacement. It is not meant to be used, like a regular Joy-Con where you can take it off and it's wireless. It is meant to be for when your Switch is in handheld mode, you can use it, because it has a D-pad rather than the 4 segmented buttons. And it's really good for portable use for single player. So really cool stuff. I've picked one up. There are 2 versions of it in America, I think, right now. There's a Mario Odyssey themed one and a Zelda themed one. So I got the Zelda one because it was black. But that's pretty much it for this time around. Anybody else have any more for the good of the order here?
Well, I guess one thing real quick. We forgot to mention this last week, but Killer 7 is released on the PC, which means it's now the ideal version because it's all updated and widescreen and everything. So you got that going for you. So if you ever want
to we're in a real pickle, isn't that what he says?
We're in a tight spot.
We're in a tight spot. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that game was like only available on the GameCube and the PS2. So like now it's available for everyone. It's very easy to get because it's on Steam. So if you are even slightly curious about it, I highly recommend it because it's like No More Heroes was even more popular, but Killer 7 was kind of the game that put Suda51 on the map in the West.
Yes.
No More Heroes made him a household name, but Killer 7 was like, whoa, I want to see more from this guy.
It was really the first game that Americans got exposure to him from, and
yes.
I mean, he was pretty famous in Japan for his scenarios, and Silver Case was a pretty big game in Japan for that style of game.
Yeah, I mean, America never got it until like last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe even this year.
But my point was that he was a pretty famous writer for video games. Even starting on his first game, like he had a wrestling game where the main character commits suicide in the end, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
So like it was a really shocking thing, and so he's had a lot of attention for a long time in Japan. But yeah, Killer 7 was his breakthrough Western global hit, I guess you could say, and got everybody to love him.
The thing with Suda51, I mean, I don't know how or if this will apply to the Silver Case because that's like a visual novel. But one thing you'll notice across the various Suda51 games that at least the West has received is that he really puts a lot of effort into his boss fights. Like,
yes.
The games are generally pretty cool. They range from pretty cool to very cool, but you're always in it for the bosses. Now, I know a lot of games, bosses are supposed to be the big payoff to a level, but like...
This is the reason to play the game.
Yeah, with Suda51 games, like... you play it for the bosses. And this is especially true for No More Heroes, where I heard he intentionally made the game not that engaging or exciting when you're not fighting bosses. Like, when you're just running around the world, there's, like, it's empty and barren. But when you get to a level, it gets fun. And when you get to a boss, you have no idea what to expect, and it's always, like, over the top. So it's super fun to play Suda51 games for the bosses. But Killer 7 is a game that holds up consistently. The bosses are unique. You actually don't play Killer 7 for the bosses themselves, but the aesthetic and the plot are really intriguing, and the boss fights are different. Like, they are all different. Like, in a beat 'em up, you don't know what the boss is going to look like, and maybe he has a couple of moves that you don't, but, like, the way you fight bosses in Killer 7 is completely different every time.
Yeah. It beat 'em up as punch the guy. In this one, they're all different puzzles, essentially, on how to do them, and each puzzle is very different from the last.
Yeah, there's one where you have to shoot part of the arena to hurt the boss. There's one where the boss runs around really fast, and you have to catch her when you can. There's one where the boss, it's like a 2D thing sliding back and forth. You have to catch her when you can. Like, it actually is different every time, and the music is just great. That's not Suda51. That's the composer Jun Takata, I believe the name is. I hope I have that right. But but still, the music is consistently fantastic in Killer 7.
Yeah, this is one of the famous Capcom 5 that eventually got ported to the PS2.
That's right.
For anybody who doesn't know, there were 5 GameCube exclusive Capcom games that were supposed to be exclusive, and only one of them remained exclusive, which was probably the worst one of the bunch.
Masafumi Takata, I got the name wrong. And Jun Fukuda, there it is. I was halfway with both.
And one of them never came out.
That's, well, wasn't one of them like Dice on the GameCube? Oh no, it was like Piano 5.
It was product number 3, I think.
Oh yeah, Piano 3. Excuse me, I'm so good.
Product number 3 was a very unique game that some people liked, but most people didn't. So definitely a game that was very idiosyncratic. But anyway. Killer 7 was a great game. I loved it. I fell in love with Suda51 as a director, game director. As a result.
Luminaire introduced me to it. He showed me the end of the first level at his place, and I was like, I'm gonna get this. And then I went out and bought the game, and I beat it before he did.
Yeah, and the gameplay, I have to say, is very unusual. So weirdly, it's kind of on a rail. Yeah, don't judge it based off of gameplay alone. It's important for aesthetical style reasons and also for the way that it tells a story. It's very unique.
And what also is cool is that everything is like the graphics are very cell shaded and comic booky.
Really
so you can play it 10 years from now and it'll still look the way it's supposed to. It's not like, oh, these graphics haven't aged well. Like it's like Zelda the Wind Waker. Like it looks the way it should, you know?
It was done in exactly the way it needed to look and will always look.
Yeah, it's going for comic book art. You're not going to look up a 1940s comic and be like, oh, this art hasn't aged well. It's like, it's the way the guy drew it.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jet Set Radio Future and Jet Grind Radio. Those games look the way that they do, and there's nothing else they could have done to it and in the future could do to it to make it look better. It looks the way it looks perfectly.
Yeah, like you make it look widescreen or whatever, but like the graphics, like that's just what it is.
Yep. So yeah, definitely take a look at that. I hope they had some quality of life improvements. One thing that I didn't like about the original release was that it didn't save your joystick configuration, and I'm an inverted guy, so I had to I literally had to No, you know what it was? You couldn't change it mid-game. So you and I were trading off while playing it, so you would actually have to save the game and restart the game to get to the options menu in order to change it back.
Okay.
I think that's what it was. So anyway, definitely, I believe they fix a lot of that stuff. That there's quality of life stuff. So definitely check that out. Anything else, guys, for the good of the order?
That's it for me.
I would like to give a shout out to Darksiders 3, which isn't out yet, but will come out a day before this podcast is released. I never really I played the first two games and I loved them, but not because they were like great games or anything. It was just because they like were well made, had a nice aesthetic, and like really scratched an itch for that kind of like Zelda-like gameplay that we don't get as often as we think. It tends to lean more towards the Metroidvania style as opposed to like the free exploration that Zelda games usually have, which is a little bit different.
I'm far behind in these games, unfortunately. I made about an hour into the first game, and I really need to go back to it.
I actually just bought the first two, the only two right now, but I actually just bought 1 and 2. We're recording this on Cyber Monday, so I'm still getting Black Friday Cyber Monday sales. So Darksiders 1 was $2.50, and Darksiders 2 was $4.50. So
that's awesome.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing those games eventually when I finally beat Dark Souls, but I'm getting there. So.
And I was gonna say you are getting there.
I have 2 major bosses left, so.
Yeah, you have 2 story bosses left and DLC if you want it.
Yep.
So, Darksiders 3 is definitely a AA title. It doesn't have the... It's made by THQ Nordic instead of the main THQ studio, so it's not as like a well refined of a game as the first two. And
wait, isn't that the only THQ studio left?
Is it?
Yes, because THQ folded, and so THQ Nordic was Nordic by itself, and they purchased the THQ name in order to.
Well, they're like I said, they're not made by the mega studio. They're made by a smaller studio.
Well, now it is the main studio.
yeah, the original main THQ.
Yeah, but no, I know what you mean. It used to be a AAA company, and now it's a AA company.
Which is like an entirely different company that happens to own the rights. Not that they personally, anyone at the original THQ had a lot of like creative insight into the game. It was all like a Joe Madureira's joint project for like enemy designs and character designs and I guess the story writing. So like a lot of that should be retained, and of course there's a canon and there's like a book series that I've heard is actually like way better than it deserves to be.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's really cool that the series kind of rose from the ashes, because I remember when THQ folded, this was the one major series that did not get picked up. Because like all the other major THQ games had gotten picked up, like Saints Row, for instance, was the major game at THQ at the time. So those a lot of those titles got picked up by like Deep Silver and stuff like that, and nobody had picked up the Darksiders, leaving the series only halfway done, because we're supposed to have 4 Horsemen eventually,
right.
4 Horsemen games, and maybe a 5th game to bring them all together. Is what I assume. It's really cool that they were able to purchase them and actually continue the series. I'm okay with a AA title too, because they tend to be shorter and respect your time though. Like there's no fluff in them. It'll be like a 20-hour experience, but all of it'll be meat. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with that. I'm better with that than a 40-hour game with the same amount of content and like a lot of repetition. So I'll take it.
I am probably going to buy it. I will probably enjoy it. I'm not my expectations are not extremely high, but it will probably give me what I want.
Good. It'll probably be in a different style than even the second game, right? So like the first game was just kind of like a straight up Zelda game. The second one had kind of like Diablo loot.
Yeah, it was still like Zelda like, just that the equipment system was Diablo like.
Okay.
And I mean, that was sort of the thing with the original Darksiders, was that it was extremely Zelda-like, except that it also had the portal gun.
Gotcha.
So they kind of like it was evident. So there was a Penny Arcade comic about this where they said like, why are we giving them a pass when they're so obviously ripping off so many great games? And he just said like, well, if we don't like it, it's derivative. If we like it, it's an homage.
Yeah.
That is actually very clever. I've actually run into that argument with people that are like in film criticism. Drive. I don't know if you've ever actually seen Drive with what's his name? Gosling, Ryan Gosling. Did you ever see that? Well, it has a bunch of references to like film school favorites, like Godfather and stuff like that, like shots directly pulled from it. But I think somebody was just like saying that this was just a ripoff of old movies, and I'm like, no, it's an homage. Like like this is meant for like a nerd to recognize, but like it really is a fine line, isn't it? Like that argument is more opinion based than I guess we want to.
Well, I would say it's derivative if it's trying to pass off like it was their idea.
So what I used to think is that if you pick up on the reference, it shouldn't change your interpretation of the film, or at minimum, it should add another layer to it.
Yes.
That doesn't change the primary interpretation of the film or the work. So, like the example that I used to reference was a game that I was planning on Let's Playing. That's why I was analyzing it. It's called Anodyne. It's another Zelda-style game, and it's one of those. It's an ontological mystery style of game where you like wake up in this foreign landscape and you don't know how you got there. And like everything is very strange and offsetting, and you meet this guy who's called the Village Elder, and he gives you some cryptic hints, and then you walk up to a sign that says like the Village Elder in name only, for he is neither, and it's supposed to like really throw you off, but it's actually like a word for word reference to a sign from Link's Awakening, where it says like the wind fish in name only, for it is neither. And like when I read that originally, like that Link's Awakening is an absolute trip. Like the first time you play it and you don't really know what's going on, it's very bizarre for a Zelda game. But like seeing this and seeing it as a reference and not just like a something to an anodyne that's designed to make you question who the Village Elder really is and what his motives are, it kind of like helps you parse what's going on. It gives you a frame of reference. And I think that takes a little bit away from the impact of that one particular scene. Like, those are the kinds of references I don't like.
Yeah.
If it's a spoiler because it's a reference.
Like, imagine if the Silent Hill thing, like, there was a hole here, but it's gone now. Like, imagine if that was a reference to something. It wouldn't be nearly as scary, even if it seemed on the surface.
That is true. Like, yeah, I remember that movie where there was a hole there. Yeah, like, it is just weird if, like, because you don't know really what that means unless there really was a hole here, but it's gone. But even if that's true, why does it matter to the point where you need to write that message down? So it's like it's creepy, even though it's kind of mundane in its level of not being understood. It's like in real life it would be like a giant who cares if you saw that, but like in a horror game it's like, does it have meaning? And you're kind of like left slightly uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that I don't know. It's just one of those things where reference for reference sake, like the manatee jokes in Family Guy, are you need to have substance behind your references to enrich things. I think in Drive that is the case. There's a specific shot in Drive that happens that is supposed to allude to a shot in at the very end of the original Godfather, and it very much so means the same thing, but also has a twist to it. So I really love that.
Yeah, because like the example I'm thinking of is in Star Wars Rogue One, where there's 1,000 nods to the original trilogy. But that just came off to me like, I made the movie and I love the original trilogy. So it's like, yes, I've seen episodes 4, 5, and 6, thank you. Could we move on with your original story, please?
I mean, I've pointed this out before. Remember, I had a whole rant about this movie when I came on the podcast to talk about it. There's a whole scene where R2-D2 and C-3PO basically stare at the camera and say, like, boy, we wish we were in this movie, too.
Yeah.
well, in Drive, at the very end of Godfather, the door closes between Michael Corleone and his wife. Symbolizing the fact that he is completely immersed in the crime world and will never, and is completely separated of his old life with his wife, and therefore his family as well. And he has completely embraced himself as the new Godfather, and as a result has sacrificed his humanity and his soul. In Drive, it's very similar. he's trying to rescue a girl from these people attacking her, and he passionately kisses this girl, and they have like a really good moment. But then somebody comes in there and tries to kill them both, and Ryan Gosling's character is a hitman, and he kills this guy, but not only just kills him, like brutalizes him and head stomps him, and like she gets out of the elevator that they're in while this happens. This is in a confined space, and the elevator closes between the two of them, and he has a psychotic look on his face from just killing this man. Like he's all like sweaty and like psychotic, and it's just the symbolism of like, hey, you're never going to have this ideal life that you ever wanted. It's not going to happen. It's just not. It's not there. He saved you, but you are not going to have a life together. He's a maniac. Like, despite him saving you, he's a crazy person. So I liked it in that it showed, aesthetically in a way that it was very similar, but also had that twist of psychosis to it. Very, very good scene. So I definitely recommend that. But anyway.
Did anybody kiss the ring on his hand when the elevator door shut, or was that taking it too far?
No, everybody in that elevator besides him was dead.
So then it's not a Godfather reference at all.
Yes. It was an homage.
Oh, sorry.
All right, everybody.
What were we just talking about? I swear to God.
Sorry, I just woke up.
Oh man, the rails have deviated quite a bit on this one, but I'm okay with it. We had a good time. That is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, you may be able to see a new Let's Play that Lotus Prince and I will be releasing sometime very soon. So look out for that. I'm teasing it a little bit.
Oh my god!
Just a little bit.
Yeah. We were finally going to do something with some video to it rather than just audio. So a little bit additional content that you're not used to for Reactive Consciousness. Hopefully, bring in some views and some likes and some bells ringing.
And some likes on iTunes, even though it doesn't make sense for this particular thing.
Oh, I'm gonna pimp it on the Let's Play, believe me. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can find me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Switch, and Battle Nerd.
Battle what? Too late. My turn. So you can follow.
I fucked up, guys. Let's restart this 100
me on my YouTube
this hour
channel,
and
Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on
Podcast.
Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, you can, if you want to see my videos early, get in on exclusive live streams, choose upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or get in on a chat with me and other patrons, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account on patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media accounts. I do not have a Patreon, but if you give me money, I will appreciate it.
Why, thank you.
He will throw a little. If you give him some money, you will unlock the throw more shade at Vi's tier.
And that's OldManStompy's MO, so it lines up.
I mean, if you pay for the gas, I'll just drive over to his house and like yell at his window for a while until the cops come.
Literally, old man yells at like house.
So you had the wherewithal to drive to my house, but you couldn't go pick up your wife in the rain.
Well,
I just love the idea of Vice's girlfriend being like, "Do you know that old guy outside?" No.
Well, let's be fair to that previous statement, Vice. At the time, she was not my wife, so she was my girlfriend.
Oh, okay,
so
that makes it better.
I left
okay.
my girlfriend in the rain.
Jesus.
She's not your girlfriend anymore, is she? Maybe you should have thought of
No,
it.
she is my wife.
True.
I was just being opportunistic, but we're actually couples friends, so that would be even funnier if Jen didn't recognize Keith. You know.
Yeah, who is that weird old man?
What would probably happen is that like I would bring my wife to the apartment, and like her and Jen would hang out, and they would just be like, let them yell at each other, let them get it out of their system.
Yeah, but I'd be inside, and you would not, and it would be funny.
I would be in my car. I'd be fine.
All right. Well, we'll catch you on Thursday, everybody.
Until next time, everyone.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.